Okay, welcome kiddos. We're going to do looking inside a cell with the plant cells and organelles. That kind of rhymed.
So, are we picking back up where we left off?
No, we're starting over.
Oh, okay. So you need to make sure that you have your note guide because you're going to fill this in as we go. So just a couple things about the note guide. So to put it into your notebook, you're going to fold it in half.
Hamburger.
You're going to glue one side down, and the side that you don't glue down, you are going to title it Cell Organelles. Okay? And then when you look in your table, you notice that there's 3 things that you're going to fill out for each part. One of the things you're going to fill out is the function of each part, which is what we're going to go through in this video. Another thing is you're going to identify if it can be found in a plant cell, an animal cell, or both. Okay? And then you're also going to fill out a real world analogy. So that's going to be something in your everyday life that has the same job or responsibility that the part in the cell has. So think of things like in a school or in a business or in a town, things like that.
All right, so we got our handy-dandy plant cell here. We also have a handy-dandy animal cell. Now I'll try to flip through both of them so you can see what both look like. So starting with the plant cell, because I'm going to try to go in order of the organelles that's on your sheet, let's go with Mr. Cell Wall. So the cell wall is the outer green structure, and notice it's only in the plant cell. If you look at the animal cell, it looks completely different. It's not as rigid as the plant cell. I'm sorry. So the plant cell, we're going to click on that, and then here's your function. A cell wall is the rigid and protective structure used to provide shape and structure to the cell wall,
So if you notice, the plant cell is a very nice brick shape. It's very defined, and most plant cells will have that very similar shape. Animal cells, on the other hand, do not. They're very blob-like. They're different sizes, different circular shapes, and that's because they don't have a cell wall, so they have a little bit more freedom in their shape there.
And we don't need a cell wall because we have this amazing thing called a skeleton, which provides our structure and helps us have that rigid body.
So when you're thinking of something of a real-world analogy for a cell wall, think of something that provides protection or structure to things or in your life.
Okay. Next up, cell membrane. So the animal cell does have a cell membrane. Likewise, so does the plant cell. It's that pink layer. And we're going to click on the cell membrane here. And what the picture you're seeing is actually kind of like a cross connection, a cross section, that's what they call it, of the cell membrane. And you'll see it's not just a solid wall, I don't want to use that word, but there's also little transporty thingies in there.
So the job of a cell membrane is it basically says what can come into the cell and what can go out of the cell.
Right.
So there's some things that we want to allow into our cells, and there's
oxygen, food,
and then there's some things that we need to get out. It's either waste or something that we have too much of in our cells, so we need to allow some of it to go elsewhere.
So think of a real world thing that actually provides that allows some things in. Like maybe I have a thing in my house that allows fresh air in, but it protects us from the bugs and the birds and the bees. Birds and the bees.
And the sycamore trees.
Okay. The nucleus. The nucleus is a word you probably have heard before because you study the parts of the atom, and it has a nucleus. So the nucleus is a big blue thing here, and there's also a nucleus in the plant cell.
And the nucleus is really, really important because the nucleus is basically the brain of the cell. It's your control center. It tells the cell what it's supposed to do, what it's not supposed to do. When it needs to be doing something that it isn't doing, it's kind of how the cell makes its impact on the plant or the animal and makes sure that everything's going well.
If it's a bone cell, it says, hey, you're a bone cell. Be a bone cell. If it's a fat cell, it says, hey, you're a fat cell, and it turns into a fat cell. So it houses the DNA, which is the same in every single cell in the organism. You have the same DNA from your toenails to your hair to your booger. Oh, the boogers aren't cells. That's just waste. Sorry. Your nose cells then, they all have the same DNA, but they don't look the same because the DNA tells it what it is.
Which is why if you ever watch any of those crime shows, they can figure out a person's DNA from a blood sample, a skin sample, a fingernail, hair from their head. They can figure out anyone's DNA if they even just have one of those items because the DNA should be the same in all of those cells.
Yep. So the figure here is the nucleus, is talking about the chromatid, which is like the loose structure of the DNA. Okay, next up, cytoplasm. And the cytoplasm is in every cell, and you'll see it there in the animal cell. It's just the gooey stuff that connects it all together, and it's the gooey stuff that connects all this together. So in here it's green. So let's go back to here, click on the cytoplasm. I don't have a picture. Sorry.
The cytoplasm is kind of a filler. It kind of fills in all that empty space between the other organelles, gives them something nice and squishy to float around in, so they're not running into each other.
Nope.
It's just very, think of Jell-O.
Without it, it will collapse. Yeah, my grandma makes this great Jell-O, and it's always green, and she always puts pineapple and cherries. I always pick out the cherries and hide them in my napkin, but the pineapples come like the organelles. Doesn't your grandma do that?
No, that sounds gross.
Oh, I like the green Jell-O with the pineapple, without the cherries. Don't tell Granny I pick out the cherries. But the Jell-O is a total, like, cytoplasm. Okay, the chloroplast. We're not going to find any chloroplast in this cell because this is an animal cell. So I need to flip over to my friend, the plant. And I see 4 there, and they're the green structures here. So let me click on one.
And keep in mind their color, because that will kind of help you identify what their role is as well in the plant.
So the chloroplast captures the energy from the sunlight and uses that with water and carbon dioxide to produce food, which is a sugar specifically. And the chloroplasts are green. Some of that coloring on those cells are kind of like false coloring. It's just what people just pretend. It's little artists. But the chloroplasts literally are green. And when you look at plant cells later, you'll see green little globs.
And now that you know their function, that their job is to take energy from the sun, you should understand why animal cells don't have chloroplasts.
No green here.
We do not get energy from the sun that power our cells. We get energy that power our cells from food.
And if you want to make a connection, this is called photosynthesis. Okay, vacuoles. We do have vacuoles in animals and in plants. So some resources say different things. Some resources animals don't. I kind of disagree with that. So vacuoles here would be these little globulies. In the plant, it is monstrous. It is this swimming pool in the middle.
So vacuole's job is to basically pick up the food and water, but then it also takes in the waste. So it kind of is a catch-all for the cell. Big storage facility. So if you think of vacuole, if you want to think of that, it vacuums kind of the food and the water as it enters the cell, holds it there until the cell needs it. And then also takes the waste and then sends it to where that needs to go, so it gets removed from the cell.
I want to point back out to the plant cell. The vacuole is large. It is a very significant piece in identifying a plant versus animal cell. Think what happens when you don't water your plants so much. And if you notice there's a drought, leaves and the crops get all loopity-loopity, like drippy and droopy. It's because the vacuoles are actually empty. And if you water the plant, if you water the crops, if it rains, then the leaves will become more like upright. That's because you actually literally fill the vacuole.
Which is why also you'll notice that the plant cell has a larger vacuole than the animal cell, because plants don't get to choose when they want to go get a drink of water or when they want a little after-school snack. They have to take what they can get when they can get it. So when it rains, that vacuole fills up so that it has some water left over in case it doesn't rain for a few days. Animal cells don't need that because we can walk ourselves to the fridge or the sink and get ourselves something to drink or eat whenever we need to fill our vacuole.
I just make my kids walk to the fridge.
I don't have kids yet.
Okay, mitochondria. This is in both cells. You'll see mitochondria here. This little guy is down there. Looks like a hot dog with ketchup. And they're right here also. So let's click on one of the mitochondria. The mitochondria is a pretty important piece of the cell, and it produces the cell's energy and converts food molecules to energy. So since plants and animals need energy to survive, we both need mitochondria. And it converts it into usable energy that we can actually use. Like the food stores energy, but that's just chemical. We need it turned into actually cellular energy to like lift up stuff.
Yeah, and different types of cells have different amounts of mitochondria in it. So cells that work really, really hard, like your muscle cells, are going to have a lot of mitochondria in it. Miss Melissa's has huge amounts of mitochondria in it.
I'm so strong.
Because the muscle cells need a lot of energy in order to work.
That's right. Okay, so now you'll notice you're on the right-hand half of your sheet, and that's because those were the words that we just covered are like the proficient level. And now we're going to give you 4 extra words, which we consider essential for you to know, but they're not in the power standards. So those are going to be your advanced level words. So do not pause this video because we expect you to know all of them. Okay, so the endoplasmic reticulum, we will refer to it as ER. So it's called endoplasmic reticulum. Both cells have it. It houses around the nucleus. So these little guys here and the guys here, there's 2 types. There's smooth and rough. We won't expect you to know that yet. In high school they will. And here it is. There's the rough, and there's the smooth. So let me see if that's the right link. Yep, there it is. So the ER are just passageways or hallways that the cell uses to transport material. They kind of look like that if you look at them. And it moves materials from one part to another.
And on the rough ER, which is pictured on this screen, actually houses an organelle that you're going to learn a little bit more about in just a few minutes.
Or seconds. Okay, so ribosomes are next. Not ribosomes, ribosomes.
Oh, like right now you're going to learn about them.
Yep. And the little black poppy seed-like things, those are called ribosomes. So they're on the rough ER. And sometimes they do float freely in the cytoplasm. In this picture, there's not any. So those are ribosomes here. I got one I can click on.
Okay, so the whole goal of the ribosome is to produce protein. So I think you guys have probably heard of protein before. It's what you get in meat.
Right.
So ribosomes, that's their number one goal. They produce the protein, which they produce it on the ER so that it has an easy way to get from the ribosome to other places.
Yeah. And protein's more than just like food you eat. It builds everything in your body.
Yeah.
So if you look at this, it's really complicated. You will learn about it in high school again, but it's an amazing process that your body is able to do. 2 more. Golgi body. Again, it's in both. We got it right here. It kind of looks ER-ish, but I know the difference because the ER is always next to the nucleus, and Golgi bodies can be wherever. And then in a plant cell, it's in the same location.
Okay, so the Golgi body takes the material that the ER, or endoplasmic reticulum, produces and then sends it out to the other parts of the cell. So while the ER has a passageway for that material to travel through, it doesn't actually leave the ER until the Golgi body comes and gets it and then takes it to where it needs to go. And
it's really cool because they actually put a little code on it. It's like a little sticker that you get at the UPS store, but it'll put a little code on it and say, this is for this part of the cell, this is for the lysosome, this is for the vacuole, this is for the nucleus or whatever, and that little code will tell it where to go. So that's why the Golgi body is so special. Finally, the lysosome. The lysosomes are right here. And again, they're just little circle doohickey thingies. And they're in the plant cell too. There's only one in this picture, but there may be more. And the lysosome, it has a very important job.
Its goal is to break down the food and any other cell parts that might be kind of done. They just have outlived their worth to us. So the lysosome takes those cell parts, breaks them down, and then eventually the cell gets rid of them. And the wonderful thing about the cell is that if you have a mitochondria that's worn out, your cell will produce another mitochondria so that it can help, still function properly. But we don't want to leave any kind of parts in the cell that aren't doing their job. They're just kind of wasted space that way.
And cells aren't that big for a reason. You can't have too big of a cell or things will get lost. Okay, kiddos, so that's your cell organelles. We expect you to know the difference between animal and plant. We expect you to know the first 7 for sure, and really, we do want you to know all 11. There's no really good excuse for that. If you have trouble memorizing things, I suggest making flashcards with these.
Yeah.
And have your parents quiz you or something.
It's a great idea.
Okay, kids, peace out.
Later.
15, 10,